Hey everybody, KC here. So a couple of months ago, actually it was more than a couple of months ago, because as I remember it, Michael Sansolo and I were standing outside when we recorded a video at the Wegmans parking lot in Harrison, New York, and it was really, really cold. So right now it's about 90, 95 degrees here. So it was more than a couple of months ago. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But one of the things we were talking about during our conversation about Wegmans was the future of food retailing. And Michael was taking the position that Wegmans, which is still very much a store-oriented experience, that was in his mind, to a great extent, the future of food retailing. Okay, it's an experience. It's more than the average retailer. Strong presence in terms of private label, great fresh, and a really strong cult-like following. And my position was, I love all that, except that to me, Wegmans has not embraced the whole idea of the internet, okay, and e-commerce and e-grocery to the extent that they should have. They've outsourced way too much of it to Instacart, and I think they ought to be doing more on their own, that their online brand ought to support the in-store brand. So a little bit of a difference of opinion, not that big a deal. But it was interesting. I was just listening to Pivot, which is a podcast with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. It's one of my favorite podcasts. And they were talking about the new Wegmans that just opened up in Washington, D.C. And apparently it's very close to where Kara Swisher lives and competes with a nearby Amazon Fresh store and a nearby Whole Foods. Happens to be the Whole Foods that Michael and I looked at that has integrated the Just Walk Out technology. And she loves the Wegmans store. Scott Galloway is a Wegmans fan as well. And one of the things they talked about was the extent to which Wegmans engages the customer. And the observation that Kara Swisher made was that Wegmans has an enormous amount of soul, okay? And she said that the Amazon Fresh store, soulless. And a lot of people would argue, I think, that the Whole Foods in the Amazon-owned period has become less soulful than it was back in the day when it was founded. And I just thought this was interesting, and I think it's a really good point. And I do think it is a problem that maybe Amazon has going forward, that its stores don't have enough soul. They have a lot of nuts, a lot of bolts, a lot of bits, a lot of bytes, but maybe they just don't have enough soul. Now, maybe that won't matter in terms of what Amazon is trying to do. Maybe they don't want to have soul. Maybe they're going to be so focused on efficiency that the whole notion of effectiveness is not going to be important. But listen, they don't do merchandising as well. They don't do marketing as well as a company like Wegmans. And I just thought this was the other point of view. And I do think, as I think back on our conversation, and I think about how Kara Swisher put it into context, that the notion of soul in retailing, soul in physical retailing, is incredibly important. And if you're a physical retailer, I think you do have to look around and say, where's the soul in this place? Are we focused on being effective or are we so focused on being efficient, it's at the expense of being effective and at the expense of communicating our soul, our values, our priorities, and our particular vision of what food retailing should be about? Are we being efficient at the cost of all those things? It's absolutely worth thinking about. And as always, I recommend the Pivot podcast with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway to you. It's terrific. Anyway, that is what's on my mind. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.